welcome everyone. We are going to thank you for being here with us today. We're going to call this meeting of the Wasatch Front Regional Council to order. Today is March 23rd, 2023. And as I said, this is the Wasatch Front Regional Council. Thank you to everyone who's here with us in person and also everyone joining us online. We welcome you and we appreciate it. We're going to do introductions starting going around the table, and then we will ask Andrea Pearson to let us know everyone who's here online. So if we can, let's just start down here. That's all right. We'll go all the way around the table, starting with Rosie.
Rosie Hernandez, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Mike Sopchak, Communications Manager for WFRC.
Jennifer Elskin, Federal Highway Administration.
Brandon Stanger, Clinton Mayor.
Beth Holbrook, Utah Transit Authority.
Christy Overson, Mayor of Taylorsville.
Andrea Pearson, WFRC.
Andrew Gruber, I'm Executive Director here at WFRC.
Don Ramsey, South Jordan City Mayor and Chair of Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Jeff Celestrini, Mayor of Mill Creek.
Jenny Wilson, Salt Lake County Mayor.
Bob Dandoy, Roy City Mayor.
Joy Petro, Layton City Mayor.
Carlos Braceras, Utah DOT.
Hello, I like to make an entrance. Laura Hanson, Governor's Office of Planning and Budget.
Miranda Jones Cox, WFRC.
Okay, and those council members and alternates that we have joining us online are Commissioner Jim Harvey, Mayor Lauren Palmer, Mayor Dirk Burton, Commissioner Lee Perry, Mayor Mike Wykers, Commissioner Bob Stevenson, Commissioner Scott Wardle, Council Member Blaine Fackrell, no, I'm sorry, Commissioner Fackrell, Commissioner Mike Newton, Mayor Debbie Wynn, and Commissioner Gage Froer.
Thank you. I'm also going to just welcome Commissioner Kamalu, who just walked in as well. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Okay. Item 1A on our agenda, we've got an action item from, we need to approve the minutes from the January 26, 2023 meeting and the financial statement and check register for December of 22 and January of 23 and the budget expenditure report to date. Those have been sent out for review. Does anyone have any questions or concerns, or is there a motion to approve those as they stand?
Motion to approve as stand.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I get a second? Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. All of those are approved. Appreciate that. To everyone joining us in public, I talked to everybody who was here before I had to come and sit down. And so anyone I didn't get to catch or meet, welcome. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have our public comment period of the meeting. And I know that there are several people here who would like to offer comments on Little Cottonwood Canyon. We have had extensive public comment at our last meeting in January, and we recently had a public comment period on the entire regional transportation plan, the draft of the RTP. And we've received so many comments on the draft RTP that staff is still combing through them, a lot of comments. And so they're still, every one of them are read, every one of them are considered, every one of them are taken into account. So those don't just go nowhere. They're real and they matter and they're being read and analyzed. Because there's been a lot of interest in the topic, we have updated, just for everyone's information, a frequently asked questions document that is available on our website. Just go to Wasatch Front Regional Council's website and there's an FAQ page that has been updated. Given the recent public comment opportunities, today we're going to take 15 minutes of public comment, 1 minute per person. We've got a time certain legislative update with legislative leadership that is not flexible. The time certain is what it is. That's when they are available. So we have 15 minutes that we can do public comment. We'll give everyone 1 minute. what I'd like to do, I'm not sure if we, I think if we do 10 people here in person and 5 people online, and if you are online and would like to make a comment, I would ask that you put your name and information in the chat, and we'll have Andrea. Okay, raise your hand and let us know, and then we will make sure that we can allow for that and accommodate that. Up until that point, we'll take 10 1-minute comments here in person. And Rosie, are you the one who's following that, timing that? Okay, great. Rosie will be our timekeeper so that we can just listen and hear what you have to say. With that, I will open the public comment and remind you, please give us your name for the public record.
My name is Patrick Shea. I represent Friends of Alda. Been an attorney for 45 years. I prepared a memo.
I'm sorry, is the microphone on? It should have the green. Okay, so if you're speaking
we
in
go.
public, and Rosie, will you
There
just
you go.
stop the
It's now
timer for a
green.
sec? Just everybody just speak right into the microphone and make sure it's green. Okay, go
Okay.
ahead, Pat. Thank
I
you.
prepared a one-page memorandum I would ask you to read, and if you haven't read it, pass it along. It goes to this memo that Andrew asked for from Stoll Reeves. And it's an opinion that says that you have to consider, but unfortunately, it doesn't tell you what consideration means. And in my judgment, it's telling you to look at 45 degrees rather than 360 degrees as to what the actual cost of taxpayer dollar is going to be. As a public official or an elected official, if you had $550 million, which is UDOT's estimation, or more accurate of $1.4 billion, how would you spend it? Would you spend it on a gondola 8.5 miles long that only services 2 private for-profit ski resorts? You have a responsibility as an extension of the Federal Highway Administration and the Department of Transportation to look at what the
Pat,
actual
thank you so
tax
much for your
dollars-
comment. Your
I'd
time's
like to
up.
reserve some time to the end, but that's not possible.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Carl Fisher. I'm the executive director of Save Our Canyons. We find it troubling that the Wasatch Front Regional Council is suggesting that the board has no discretion over the insertion of projects in Little Cottonwood Canyon through a flawed legal memo on that matter. One of the primary requirements of the RTP is that a plan must be fiscally constrained. This is even more so the case when the region is found to be in non-attainment, which we are. Both WFRC's analysis and UDOT's EIS say the gondola is not funded. Thus, incorporation is not fiscally constrained. Additionally, portions of the funding source, the CCTIF, for this project was directed for enhanced bus in both Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons, suggesting this is not a stable funding source for the gondola and Little Cottonwood EIS components, but a funding source to help improve for the Cottonwood Canyons. Your Republican communities are not saying don't fix the issues in the Cottonwood Canyons. Rather, we're trying to invite you in a conversation to find
Carl,
solutions.
thank you for
to
your
the
comment. Your
Cottonwood
time's up.
Canyons. Please invite the public into the process.
Thank you, Carl.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Maru. I am a father to 2 beautiful daughters. I'm an orthodontist in the community, and I'm a long-term resident of Sandy, Utah. What this gondola would do, it doesn't change the number of cars and the number of people that are going to be traveling to this area. All it does is move them to a different location. It moves them down canyon into our neighborhoods, into our parks, where our schools are, where my kids are out riding their bikes. What this would create is chaos in our communities. There has to be a better way. One thing that I have not seen done, there has not been a study done to see what realistically is the number of people and cars that can go up that canyon in a single day. Why haven't we done that? And once we do, I think we need to entertain limiting the number of people that go up that canyon to whatever that study tells us. I think if we dig deeper and if we look to the community and not just to these businesses, we'll find great solutions. Thank you for my minute.
Thank you, Mike. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council here in person?
Mike Marker, president of Friends of Little Cottonwood Canyon. Trying to figure out how you can say something in 60 seconds. It's really difficult. Thinking about the core functions of a Metropolitan Planning Organization, of which you are, your job is to involve the general public and all significant affected subgroups in the four essential functions that you have. One of the challenges that I think a group that you have is one that I've seen most leadership groups have in my consulting work with leadership teams, is people, when they come to a group like this, you represent your smaller silos. There's mayors from various communities here, and you have those constituents. When you come to this big table, you have to wear a second hat. You have to think about the region. I found that to be very difficult in my consulting practice to get to leaders at this level to understand that and realize that sometimes you have to jump into the hot water and take on conflict. That's not easy because we're pain avoidance animals. The community is speaking loud and strong on this issue. We hope that as you review the comments that are going to you, that you don't shirk from your responsibility to dig deep, ask tough questions, and try to understand the issues that we're trying to present to you.
Thank you. Anyone else in person?
I'm Barry Peterson. I'm just a taxpayer, concerned citizen. I've lived in Big Cottonwood Canyon and skied in Little Cottonwood Canyon. I just think that as a regional transportation solution, the gondola doesn't address a lot of the issues. It's good for the few days that are powder days when people are lined up and parking in the neighborhoods, but it doesn't address the summer transportation problems that we have, and it really only helps Snowbird and Alta. It just seems like there's if you're going to be spending money, we need to look at something that's going to address more of the transportation issues and help more of the people get up and down the canyons. Somebody was telling me the other day about this idea on those powder days. You just close the canyon from like 6 to 8. Just let buses go up and down the canyon. People are going to be on that bus, and I think that would address a lot of the issues. But anyway, I think there's other solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sean Ennis, taxpayer and resident of Salt Lake City. I have attended the Wasatch Front Regional Council previous to this. I've made comments to the UDOT public commenting period, and I attended the city council meeting where they voted against gondola. And as a taxpayer, I'm beginning to lose trust in my leadership in the community, and I feel the public feels that way as well. We're starting to feel like we're not being heard, that the comments aren't being taken with the gravity that they have overwhelmingly presented the statements. They range from 65 to 83% against the gondola. And I feel like that's what's going to be discovered once we analyze the latest comments as well. So what I, as a taxpayer, expect is I want an answer as to what's the weight that's given to that? And then when do we know if that even mattered at all? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Richard Markosian, and I operate Utah Stories magazine and podcasts. I had one question for Dave Fields, and I believe it was Scott Latherty, Ski Utah president. They did not want to answer this question, and I think I'd pose it to all of you. The question is, would you put a gondola to the base camp of Mount Everest? And if not, why? Obviously, concrete and steel solve a lot of problems when it comes to transportation. But when you're examining the pristine beauty in that canyon, and to believe that it's not somehow going to be greatly marred or decimated with thousands of tons of concrete and steel, you're missing the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is you'll absolutely devastate that canyon forever, not for a short period, but forever, by putting thousands of tons of concrete and steel in that canyon.
Your time's
That's all I
up.
have to say.
Thank you, Richard.
Hi, my name is El Maru and I'm 12 years old. Little Cottonwood Canyon is my favorite place to be. I hike there, I backcountry ski, I go to all the resorts, and that's where I go to have fun. Please think about me and all the other kids in our community and about our futures. Preserving this natural resource and this beautiful canyon is so important to me and everyone that lives here. It's not just an issue today, but an issue that'll affect the future and for many generations on. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And good for you at 12 years old for being willing to come speak in a public meeting. That's awesome. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Leslie Kovach, and I'm on the board of Save Not Pave. The reason I'm here is to talk about Wasatch Boulevard, which is included in the EIS. I want you to strongly consider the damage that is going to be done to all the homeowners, including myself and the thousands of other people who will be forced to deal with traffic every day, not just the 39 hours that we currently have and the $1.4 billion that UDOT is putting out there. We ask you to consider our communities, our walking paths, our biking paths. How do we get to our businesses? How do I get to the grocery store? I had a neighbor the other day that turned around and asked me, "You bought an e-bike, what are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to ride to the grocery store." He's standing on my back deck. He said, "You will die." We will die. We are dying in this community if we don't stop the gondola, if we don't stop the expansion of the roads, if we don't protect our communities, we will die. Consider that. Consider our water. Consider our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. We have time for one more here in person.
Hi, my name is John Gleave, and I'm 75. I've lived in Salt Lake my whole life. I love the canyon. A short while ago, I would have thought it was unimaginable that a gondola would be proposed. I'm a skier. I love skiing, but I think there are so many other benefits to that canyon. Primarily the beauty of that canyon. I've fished, I've hiked, I've picnicked along there. I urge you, the people who are in charge of deciding this, UDOT particularly, who should be representing us all. This is for a small percentage of the population. The taxpayers are expected to fund this. They're not the ones that are going to benefit for this. Do you know how much it costs to ski at Snowbird? I just skied there, and I can't afford to ski there very much. And my friend has free passes. So, and I love skiing, but there are other uses to the canyon. White pine is beautiful, red pine, hikes to the Pfeiffer Horn. Please consider that when you make this decision. This is for all the people, not for a few extremely wealthy people.
Sir, thank you for your comment. Your time's up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Do we have anyone online, Andrea?
Mr. Weston, if you would unmute and.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm private citizen, former candidate, potentially maybe, who knows, a future candidate for office. I want to give voice to all the voters who, taxpayers who are working right now, because I think at root, this is an issue about proportionality and what the priorities are for most of the people who would be asked to pay between $500 million or $1 billion. And having talked to a lot of those voters in Magna and Manaway and in Monticello, if you were to ask them in this room what their top priorities are, I can guarantee you it's not the gondola. It's housing, it's rent, it's finding a job, a living wage, it's finding a house to live in. So I would ask that you keep all those people in mind who are never going to be able to speak to you on Zoom like I am, or in person on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. But thank you for all your work on all of these tough decisions. This is a big one. I hope you'll do something with us rather than to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weston.
Mr. Rutledge.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Brad Rutledge. I am a co-founder and board member of Wasatch Backcountry Alliance. I live in the city of Holiday. Couldn't attend today's meeting due to work, but thanks for allowing the public to comment on this. You're obviously buried in a lot of public comments from the public comment period. I just really wanted to say This issue is really controversial. For a lot of people, it's emotional and it's extremely complicated. And I want to encourage every member of the WFRC to please, please, please educate yourself as much as possible about this issue before you vote on it. I've heard and paid attention to a lot of the discussion about this, where people are saying, well, we want to just take UDOT's recommendations. We trust them and then push this through. And I don't believe that that's your role. I would encourage you to listen to all of the people.
Thank you, Mr. Rutledge.
Okay, thank you. And I would just like to say, I will be available to talk.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everybody who came to participate. Just as a reminder, by way of reminder, this is a project, this regional transportation plan update has been being worked on the last 4 years. And all 4 years we have announced at all of our meetings, most of our meetings at least, and most of the regional growth committee meetings, that the vote and the decision on that takes place in May. So it's not actually an item even on the agenda this month because it's in May. That's when it always is. That's what it is. So I just wanted to note that we're not taking any, we're not voting or having major discussion about that today. That's scheduled in May. Just wanted to remind everybody, and most of you know, but for the sake of everyone, I just wanted you to know that's always been the process. That's always been the plan. With that, I appreciate it. And we are going to move to our chair report, please. Our legislative update and chair report, Mr. Andrew Gruber.
Well, I'll just say.
What are your thoughts on this legislative
mm,
session's outcome? I'm
well-
happy to introduce it, but I'm just throwing it to you in case you have anything to add.
how about you go ahead?
Okay.
I know we've got Representative Mike Schultz and Senator Wayne Harper here with us, and they're ready to go. So Mayor, whatever
All right,
comments you'd
well,
like
then
to
I'm
make.
happy to give it. I'll jump right in. Okay, it was a busy legislative session. It always is. If we ever don't say it was a busy legislative session, then did we even have one, right? A lot of good work was done. The session concluded a couple of weeks ago, and kind of an unofficial theme of the session was preparing for Utah's growth, right? That's something we are all working on. It's something that's been happening for quite some time. We do have 2 legislators with us who serve as members of the Wasatch Front Regional Council, both of whom are leaders in transportation and growth related issues. And we're going to invite them to offer some insight and some highlights from the session, including legislation that they sponsored. Wasatch Front Regional Council was and is always happy to work with these legislators in developing and passing this legislation. First, we have Representative Mike Schultz, House Majority Leader. He's joining us remotely. Representative Schultz, we appreciate you. Thank you for your leadership. And second, we have Senator Wayne Harper, who's here with us as Chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. Senator, thank you very much for being here. We also have the UDOT Executive Director, Carlos Braceras. We'll ask if you'll talk about SB 185 for us and the Utah Trail Network. And then we'll have Wasatch Front Regional Council's Government Affairs Manager, Miranda Jones-Cox, give us a little more information about the session outcomes and a few of the key federal grants, things like that. So if we may, let's start with Representative Schultz.
Mayor Ramsey, Chair Ramsey, thank you very much for the opportunity and to address the council. And I just want to start off by saying how fortunate I feel to be a member of the council. And I appreciate all the work that went in to this session by WFRC. And that includes you, Mayor Ramsey. I know I saw you at a ton of the meetings. Of course, you know, Andrew Gruber and Miranda were up there every day and advocating for good policy. And so this organization is very well represented at the Capitol, and it's an honor to be part of it. So first, thank you to that. Again, Mayor Ramsey, you said it. I mean, this was another transformational year on transportation as a whole, and looking long term and short term. Many of you know that we have invested over $2 billion of additional money into transportation this year, and it went into all roads, all modes of transportation. It went into roads, transit, active transportation. I'm really excited. Carlos is going to talk to the council about his idea and what he helped push through on active transportation. And then, you know, if you take the last 3 really and add up the dollar amounts of new money or additional money that's been put to transportation. It's amazing. In 2021, we put over $700 million of additional money into transportation. 2022, over $1 billion of new money or additional money into transportation. And then again this year, over $2 billion. If you add that up, that is $4 billion that goes to roads and transit and active transportation all across the state. It's really set the state up to look long-term. We can't spend all that money in the short term. It's going to take a decade or so to spend all that money, but we can plan better. We can think more into the future. And I really believe with these investments that we've made over the last few years, that it sets us up to where the state should never have to bond again. At least I hope never has to bond again for roads. To do on transit, we're committed as a legislature to do that. Another thing that I'm excited to talk about was a bill that I ran with Senator Harper, and that's HB 301. It had three major parts to it. The biggest part, and the one that's getting the most headlines, was it reduced the gas tax by 2 cents. A lot of people were surprised when they saw myself and a few others out and champion to reduce the gas tax when we've done quite a bit to try to increase the gas tax to meet the needs of the roads. And that starts with Johnny Anderson in 2015 and the bill that he ran. I don't remember the bill number, but Andrew would remember it by heart, I'm sure. But he actually did probably one of the biggest things for transportation in the last couple decades by indexing the gas tax. Well, because of his good work that he did, the gas tax actually increased faster than we had anticipated it would. And so it gave us the opportunity to come in and actually reduce the gas tax by 2 cents. Now doing that, we also increased the total cap from 40 cents a gallon to 42 cents per gallon. But that would not likely be hit or wouldn't be hit until probably 2028. So instead of hitting the cap in 2024, it probably would extend it, and we'd hit the 40 cents in 2026, and we would hit the new cap of 42 cents in 2028. Excuse me, sorry about that. Another thing it did is it increased the registration fees by $7. $5 of the registration fee went to the current B&C road distribution formula. And then the $2, and this is something we worked with the Senate on, an additional $2 was added to it in the Senate. That went directly to rural roads, counties of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th class. We all know that they have needs in those counties, and they don't have the tax base to help offset their needs. And so we felt that was important, and we're excited about that. And then another big part of it is it added a tax to the charging stations that charge, only the charging stations that charge for electric vehicles. And so if you have one, you're not paying the fee or the tax if you charge at home, or if you go to a free charging station, you're not paying the fee. But we have all these new charging stations being built all across our roads, all across the state, mainly on our main corridors, I-15, I-70, I-80. And so the idea is mainly to capture the people moving through our state, to have them help pay for our roads. But we know as we move, decades down the road, 10, 20 years down the road, the majority of the vehicles that we're going to be driving is probably going to be electric vehicles. And so we have to find ways to replace the gas tax. And so that's what this new fee on the charging stations would do, is help offset that going into the future. So while it was a win-win in providing some short-term relief to inflationary pressures, and we were able to reduce gas tax, or reduce the overall net tax to the citizens by $25 million a year for the next couple of years, it sets us out for a more sustainable path in how we fund transportation going into the future. So I'm really excited about that. I appreciate the support. We had great support from the counties, the cities, and actually this discussion was kicked off and started in the UEOC group. So I appreciate the governor's office and everyone coming together to find something that gives the citizens of the state some tax relief at a time when we have record revenue coming into the state, but sets us up for a more sustainable and better funding mechanism for transportation into the future. So with that, I'm open to any questions or just turn the time back to you, Madam Chair.
We appreciate it, Representative Schultz. Thank you for all of your efforts, and thank you for taking some time. We know you're on some very special family time, and we really appreciate you spending part of it. So thank your family for us as well.
And it's HB 362, just for the record. Took me a moment, but 2015, just for the record.
Yeah, I bet you took about 3 seconds is all it took for you to remember that number.
Hey, Representative Schultz, this is Jeff Silvestrini calling calling. Maybe I'm calling you. Hey, I just want to commend the legislature with respect to finding a decent compromise to assist our rural communities in maintaining their roads, but without raiding the BNC road funds that municipalities depend upon. That was, I think that's a transformative thing for rural communities, and I congratulate the legislature for that compromise.
Well, and Mayor too, I maybe just point out that was, you brought up a good point. One of the first ideas that was floated out there to help, help our rural communities would have been borne by the backs of all the other communities. And I think, Mayor, you did a good job pointing out that that's not fair and, saying we need to come up with another option. And so this is what we came up with. So we appreciate your help and new leadership as well on that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We're going to turn to Senator Harper.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on this committee as well as and talk about some of the good things that happened. I appreciate Representative Schultz and his comprehensive overview of what went on. I think you'll find that we did several things. Not only did we fund transportation, but we did a major investment in transit as well. I'm happy to have been involved with transportation for quite a number of years, almost as long as Carlos Becerras has been alive. But I think when I first started in the legislature, a day or two ago, we were heavily focused on roads. Let's build roads. Over the years, we've gone through and realized we need to go through and have a more comprehensive, holistic view of what is going on. So we went through and Representative Schultz and I ran a task force, ended up creating some changes in UTA and in UDOT. We went through and created the Transportation Investment Fund, which goes through and takes dollars that would normally go to roads and put them into transit. I just left a meeting with my friends at UTA talking about how we can go through and expand bus service throughout the region. And this session, we did several things. One of those novel ones is that we set up the framework for how we're going to handle advanced air mobility in the future. We know that parcel delivery has already started along the Wasatch Front. We know that larger package delivery will happen, and within a few years, there will be air mobility through taxis and things like that. So we want to get ahead of that curve and say, okay, we've got a variety of ways that we're going to move people around. We need to make sure that it's safe, reliable, and things are done properly. With that, we ran several bills that goes through and talk about I think some good things where we clarified some of the duties back and forth between UTA and UDOT in one of the bills. We've integrated and created several different things. The housing and transit reinvestment zone, station area plans. Two of the bills that were run went through and said, okay, we've had a couple of years with that, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. How is that working? What do we need to tweak? We recognize the fact that Salt Lake City has created some plans and programs, And we didn't want to have them to run through those and create them from ground zero again. So they can take those plans, tweak them a little bit to Wasatch Front, get those approved so they can go through and do their stationary plans and HTRZs. We've had a couple HTRZs, and I'm proud to announce that South Jordan City has earned and was awarded the third HTRZ yesterday. Well done out on the west side of the valley. One of the great reasons why that is done, it's around the Red Line station in Daybreak. And guess what? They're planning to go through and have employment, recreation, housing, everything within an approximate area, so we don't have to build as many roads, building upon the infrastructure that we have here and things that are going on with that. The HTRZ is, I think, is something that is very good. We went through and changed a couple things. We created and Representative Schultz referred to the road usage charge and the electric vehicle charging stations. We went through and created made a change in that program that says once the administrative costs are funded, that goes into the BNC, so it's distributed for the benefit of all road users, as we know that the EVs will continue to increase. A couple other things I want to highlight is vertiports. If you ever want to have fun, try to find what a vertiport is with, air mobility and make sure it's done right. I had to run 3 bills, tweak all 3 of them in order to get that one done correctly. I think the last thing I want to do is to highlight the Carlos Braceras Active Transportation Investment Fund. Director Braceras was very, very critical in the implementation and getting this bill passed, which goes through and says we're going to have one-time funding to expand out active transportation systems through the state of Utah, as well as an ongoing funding. We want to have trails that are of regional significance. We have so many things where a city has this and a county has that. We want to connect those, make them of regional significance statewide so that people can go through and bike, they can walk, they can jog, whatever they want to on safe systems throughout the state. So with that, I think that's what I want to cover. And maybe that's the introduction to Director Braceras.
That is a nice segue. And, it's very cool to have a fund like that and a project like that named after you, whether unofficial or official. That's kind of a big deal. Please, Mr. Braceras.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Harper, thank you. There's a couple key players in transportation at the legislature, and obviously Representative Schultz, Senator Harper, President Adams, Kay Christopherson, Representative Kay Christopherson. I mean, just key players that have taken the time to understand transportation needs. They've listened and they've carried some pretty hefty bills over the years. And I really appreciate that. It was a very interesting session. One, Governor Cox very much was pushing the idea of the regional active transportation system. And I want to really thank our legislators for, you kind of know when it's working, when you get calls from legislators right after on the last night of the session saying, hey, would this project kind of fit in? Would this project fit in? And it's like, okay, I think people are excited about this. So, a couple of the $45 million of ongoing. It was actually, we have 5% of TIF, but that was capped at 45. And what it does is at some point in the future, the legislature, if they see that this is working, they could perhaps remove that cap and we could see this fund grow. So we feel the urgency to work with all of our partners at the MPOs, the local governments, to make this something that everyone really is excited about. I mean, all of you played a key role in helping get this done with your support, the signatures you have in helping work with legislators. So we're really excited about this. We have already appointed what we call a senior leader in the department. Josh Ventura is now what we call a group leader, and he will lead the active transportation division. And we have ongoing money to fund probably about 5 positions to be able to staff this and to be able to bring this program together. And then he's also going to be putting together and building a transit division. You recall last session, the legislature was kind enough to ask that we do capital development for fixed guideways for transit. And there's money available to do that, but we had no staff availability for that. We had no ability to pay for staff out of the transportation fund, which has constitutional limitations placed on it. And so one of the great bills was also the ability to do a little takedown from TTIF to be able to fund probably around 16 positions so that, Beth and Carlton, we can actually deliver the projects that you deserve and need to operate here into the future. So we're excited about being able to stand that up. And Josh is going to be running that group and putting it together. And so we're jumping ahead a little before the bill's actually active and the money's in place. So a little bit of cheating on that. I hope Senator Harper doesn't get too mad at me about making that happen. We just want your bill to be successful, Senator. It has been signed. We will do a ceremonial signing on that as well. So we look forward to that. I'll just mention a couple other things because there was about $800 million that was put towards debt relief. We have right now $1.7 billion in bonds that we've issued. We haven't issued bonds in the last 3-4 years, but we still have $1.7 billion to pay back. The legislature came up with $800 million that will be used for debt relief, and that'll free up, so our debt payments come out of TIF, so it first comes off the top, then the commission has the remaining amount of money to program the projects. And so we're going to use that. I think our debt payment's $318 in 2024, and then it jumps up to $340 something in 2025. And so the treasurer's office will hold that, and we will take down from that $800 million to be able to pay that debt payment, which will free up cash flow in these early years. And the idea is, as you know, we're programmed out through 2030 right now with anticipated TIF revenues. This will allow us to bring some of those projects closer in to move them up. It's really difficult right now to be managing a $5 billion program of projects that is programmed out past our normal planning horizon. And so we're excited to be able to try to pull these up a little bit, especially with the inflation that we've been seeing on construction jobs. When we plan these projects, you look out every year, we build in about a 5% a year inflation. We've seen, 12, 14% over the last couple of years. It's starting to come down, but it's still not back to the 5%. So this is going to be a great deal to help us manage that. I'll mention that maybe not to tear a Band-Aid off a wound. I don't consider it a wound, but the legislature did want to move forward on what we call phase 1 of the EIS for Cottonwood Canyon. And so $100 million of general fund, authorization for $50 million at a CC TIF. We've got just under $50 million remaining in what we call the recreational hotspots. So we'll be working on putting together that phase 1 plan to be able to implement bus services in Big Cottonwood, Little Cottonwood, build a mobility hub at the mouth of Big Cottonwood, build mobility stations at each of the 4 ski resorts so that the buses don't have to go off into the parking lots. And we felt we needed another 50 million to get to really what we wanted to get to for full phase 1. So we'll scale it based on the numbers of buses that we buy. So we'll be moving forward on that here once we have the record decision. And I think that's pretty exciting to be able to try to make that first phase 1 work. Oh, and also it includes tolling in the canyon. And so we'll be using tolling, increasing tolling as the amount of cars increases to try to incentivize people to move over to the buses. And so that piece was funded. We also got $200 million for a new front runner station and more double tracking for front runner. The station would be at the location of the old prison, so the point of the mountain development. And so we figured we needed 400 million to do all the double tracking we need because this station's awfully close to the existing station in Draper. And so we need to make sure that we can still operate the system, UTA can operate the system. So we're going to continue to work to find that delta on that, but it's a really good thing for the point of the mountain development. And we're still doing the environmental document on that either BRT or light rail that goes from the Draper station down to Lehigh. So that's continuing as well. So a lot of stuff going on in in transportation, in both active transportation, transit, and in roads. Madam Chair, that's, unless there's questions.
Thank you. So much good work has been done. Yes, something you'd like to share?
Well, I know Miranda's going to round out and give a few more things. I'll just quickly say and echo my appreciation for Representative Schultz and for Senator Harper, who have been leaders and members of Wasatch Front Regional Council for years, for Carlos and for the governor, and for all of you. This organization has been calling for many, many years for a balanced approach for transportation. We've been the fastest growing state in the nation over the past decade. And we cannot address our challenges simply by roads alone. Roads and transit and active transportation are critical to our future, coordinated with our land use and our housing. And that's, Senator Harper mentioned, HTR, Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zones, stationary plans. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. All of you in Wasatch Front Regional Council, that's what's embodied in the Wasatch Choice Vision and Utah's Unified Transportation Plan. And to see the legislature and the state saying, we support that. We're going to invest in transit. We're going to invest in active transportation. And for the first time ever, I think we will look back on this, on what the legislature did this year of making a permanent funding source for trails as a means of transportation, not dirt trails. That's really good too, but paved trails as a means of transportation. 5 years, 10, 15, 20 years, we'll look back on this as a critical juncture for the kind of Utah, for the kind of region that we want to have. So I just want to say thank you again. And then Miranda, sorry to jump in front of you.
Real
Miranda,
quick, we're going to let
I'm
Mayor
going to do it
Silvestrini
too.
jump into.
So first of all, I think the Braceras Active Transportation Trail Network Act is truly a visionary plan.
You're
that
making
I-
him uncomfortable.
I also think that Governor Cox might take a little credit for that because it was in his budget, I think. But the other piece that we haven't talked about here, which is actually something that will super benefit transit in our state as well as counties and municipalities, is the legislature's reauthorization or extension of the fifth potential for additional quarter sales or 20% sales tax, not 20%, but 0.2 cents sales tax. But that split between, yeah, I'm calling Representative Schultz again. So that revenue actually, yeah, will be a boost to municipalities and counties as well as transit across our state. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Very quick, Miranda, before you go, I'm going to turn also to Carlton Christensen.
Thank you. I was just going to make a comment. In the early 80s, the state built a section of the Jordan River Parkway, and then the recession in the early 2000s actually had proposed, state parks had proposed to close it, and mostly because they didn't really have a way to operate it. And it went through my city council district, and so at the time helped negotiate the transfer to Salt Lake City, where it probably belonged in conjunction with the rest of the parkway. But having an ongoing source to maintain these systems, I don't think anybody would think that shouldn't be part of the urban fabric of the community and serves people even commuting from Davis County there. The other sort of shameless thing I'll just add is that we've had an opportunity to work with Carlos for 20 years. And I've never seen somebody more progressively think about transportation and integration in the state. And I've dealt with a lot of UDOT directors, by the way, Carlos. All your predecessors weren't nearly as accommodating to try to think through some of those options. And so if the legislature should ever choose to give the name there, I'm there at the hearing to make a pitch for it. But thank you for your service.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity. I wanted to kind of bridge what we talked about earlier, all of these things that are coming together, the transportation, the transit, the active transportation, the HTRZ, the station area planning, all of these things are now coordinating in ways that have never been coordinated before. And what we have done collectively and individually and with our state legislature really is transformational. And we are going to look at these growth years as such massive opportunities to really make connections in a way that's going to be advantageous for decades to come. And having that housing nexus, having access to transit, having the ability to have multimodal options is really going to be so transformational. And I just wanted to, thank our legislative leaders, thank Carlos, thank my colleagues, thank everyone here today, because we are all adding to that fabric that we're creating in the future. So I just wanted to articulate that, having been to the HTRZ yesterday, and I just absolutely love the vision of making that connectivity. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. Appreciate that. Miranda, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll be brief. I think we've covered a majority of what needs to be said today, and it just speaks to how well informed many of our elected officials are and how involved all of our different partners are in the many things that happened up at the session this year. Really quick, 575 passed bills this session, Senator. I think that's the highest yet. Yep. As well as the largest state budget passed at $29.4 billion. I think, and it has been said here before, but a big focus of this session was planning for and investing in growth. To share a little bit more on funding and appropriations, Carlos, first I'll hit this. The lens at which we're looking through investing in infrastructure and in transportation infrastructure is through these shared principles that were created with our transportation partners, our other MPOs. And those are the four listed here: investing in infrastructure and the importance of that, supporting multimodal transportation choices. That's been hit extensively here: trails, transit, and roads. Utilizing professional planning and prioritization processes. You all, as members of WFRC, are part of those professional processes and putting forward and prioritizing the projects that are most needed. And then lastly, being fiscally prudent, not incurring debt when it is not needed. Carlos kind of alluded to that some, in that the legislature put over $800 billion to, over a period of time, pay down existing transportation debt. So you could see that here. The $45 million in ongoing money for active transportation, which we've shared. The money for commuter rail, the Front Runner project. Carlos mentioned the specific projects for Cottonwood Canyon transportation, which the legislature specifically said was enhanced bus service, tolling, mobility hubs, and resort bus stops for both canyons. There were about $240 million of other specific projects outlined by the legislature. I think most of those were road projects. And then lastly, additional ongoing funding for rural roads through the new Rural Transportation Investment Fund. So again, some pretty, as Representative Schultz had stated, another record year of investment into transportation from the legislature. We also touched on most of these bills, so I won't belabor that either. One that Mayor Silvestrini did mention that we didn't have extensive discussion about was the extension and then changes to the fifth local option sales tax, which now allows that sales tax to be distributed to counties, cities, and to transit providers. Representative Schultz talked about HB 301, which was the gas tax cut, the temporary gas tax cut, electric vehicle charging fees, and then registration fee changes. Senator Harper discussed SB 84, housing and transit reinvestment zones, and then the other transportation changes. And then of course, 185, which was the active transportation investment fund bill. Two others that I think are worth noting, and again, there's so much that go into these pieces of legislation. There's a lot of really great stuff here. And so if you are curious, you do want more details, we have extensive bill summaries and legislative session wrap-up summaries that can provide more information if you're interested.
And Miranda, that was,
yeah.
Andrea, I think, dropped your
She did.
detailed legislative summary into the chat, and it's also available on our website. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. SB 175, that's the Rural Transportation Infrastructure Fund that provides the ongoing funding for rural 3rd through 6th class counties, distributed like B and C funds. And then SB 125, this one is kind of exciting in that it dedicates the Aspire Research Center at Utah State University as the entity to coordinate electric vehicle or electrification throughout the state, transportation electrification throughout the state. And so knowing that this is the direction that technology is moving in and that will be moving in with transportation infrastructure, it's important that, and we are very supportive of this legislation and of Aspire in their efforts on that moving forward. I want to touch briefly on 2 federal grants, one that we have applied for and then one that we have been awarded. I'll first touch on the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant award. WFRC was awarded nearly $1 million for creating a safety action plan. This plan will allow us to look regionally, work with our partners, work with our communities to identify different safety risk factors in our communities, and then identify safety strategies to improve safety throughout the region. And by creating this action plan, cities and counties can then further apply for additional grants through this program for safety projects, safety capital projects within their own communities. So I believe the action plan will be completed next year in 2024, and then cities and counties will have the ability to apply for those additional grants in summer of 2024. And then lastly, we currently have a joint grant application in. UDOT is actually the lead sponsor on this, in with the FHWA, I believe. Yes, thank you. For what is called the First Last Mile program. This is through the RAISE grant. It would provide we've requested $25 million for a collection of 15 first last mile connection projects throughout the MAG and WFRC region. These are different projects like buffered bike lanes, intersection improvements, multi-use trail connections to ultimately bridge the gap between that first mile and that last mile to and from transit to ultimately create greater connectivity for transit users. This application, they should be awarding applications or awarding grant amounts at the end of June. So we are looking forward to hearing that. And then projects would then be constructed from 2026 through 2028. I will note that a similar effort to this has been was brought forward in the past and was awarded a grant. This was when the RAISE grant was, I believe, either the Tiger or Build grant. And the same coalition and the same group of partners was successful in those first last mile projects then. And so we're hopeful that that will be the case moving forward. So just a big thanks to all of our different partners that have worked on us with these grant programs. And we're looking forward to hopefully seeing a positive result. So with that, thanks for listening. And it was a really great discussion from everyone here about the outcomes of the legislative session. And ultimately, we're just really happy to see so much investment going into transportation moving forward. So thanks.
Thank you so much. And again, to each of you who have participated, those that were kind of on the agenda to speak, Representative Schultz, Senator Harper, Carlos Braceras, Miranda, and also to our friends at the transportation at UTA. Everyone who's been part of the heavy lift, the staff here at WFRC, our council, our regional growth committee, our community partners, such a heavy lift. And I just appreciate the vision and the leadership of ensuring that we are looking long range down the road to ensure that we protect the quality of life that we love here in Utah, as we know more people choose to come and be part of it. So thank you for that. Appreciate each of you for that. And thanks for making my first ever chair report so awesome. Like I had to do nothing. You guys carried the water on that. My first chair report was very successful. Thank you for that. All right, Regional Growth Committee update. We've got Mayor Bob Dandoy here to give us an update on last week's Regional Growth Committee meeting. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We just have one action item on our agenda tonight. But before I turn to that, I'd like to briefly mention that in our Regional Growth Committee meeting last week, we discussed the status of the Wasatch Front Vision Choice Vision and the draft 2023-2050 Regional Transportation Plan, RTP. As you know, we're scheduled as a council to consider the RTP for approval in May, it was stated earlier, and we will discuss any adjustments from the public comments period during that time. Staff is still reviewing the comments received, and all the comments will be included in the draft RTP documents sent to the council before their May meeting. With one action then item, Madam Chair, we'd like to propose an amendment to the Wasatch Front Regional Council stationary plan certification policy. Now, as you may recall, in the 2022 legislative session, House Bill 462 required cities with transit stations to develop a stationary plan to encourage housing and job creation in those areas that are well suited to be absorbed. Now, Wasatch Front Regional Council was charged with providing technical assistance to the communities to develop those plans and certify them when completed and submit to us. We adopted the policy to govern that certification process. Now, this last legislative session, Senate Bill 27 made some modifications to the stationary plan requirements, Madam Chair, which warrants a revision to our current certification policy. That proposed modifications was included in your packet, and the Regional Growth Committee recommended then to the council that it be adopted. Now, before we take action on the modification, I'd like to ask Megan Townsend, if she would, as the Community and Economic Development Director for the Wasatch Regional Council, to give a brief update on the stationary plan progress and on the strategies of the Wasatch Choice Vision for Center of Development. So Meg, if you can lead us out on this.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I jump right into the stationary plan amendment, I want to connect it back to our Wasatch Choice Vision. And it is a different PowerPoint. I am not Ben, and I will not do that any justice. Okay.
It would have been interesting to see you do that, though.
I'll need some coaching from Ben first. The Wasatch Choice Vision, as most of you know, it's our blueprint for growth and development for the next 30 years. It's built on community input, and it really does represent our shared plan. It's the overarching goal is protecting and enhancing our quality of life and recognizing that this clicker is off. You guys have to watch me fight with this clicker every time. I'm so sorry. Recognizing that transportation and land use are unconditionally linked, the vision addresses both. And centers are really the land use element of the Wasatch Choice Vision. These grabs from our Wasatch Choice Vision map they're a good example of how centers really do follow our transit system. You can see all of those polygons overlaid on what's just showing is transit between metropolitan center, urban center, city centers, and neighborhood centers. The centers really do make up the land use for the vision. And this is reinforced in our work as it is reinforced by the legislation you've just heard about, stationary planning, which we're going to talk about today, but there's also the housing and transit reinvestment zones, which Senator Harper and others talked about. Congratulations, South Jordan. It's very exciting. This is all reinforcing centers, these walkable mixed use areas of our region, which very much align with transit. It is best said in this video that we'll queue up about centers in the vision.
Cities and towns across the Wasatch Front are designing and building areas called centers. Centers are special gathering places in our communities where people work, shop, live, and play in a walkable setting. Communities have identified centers in the Wasatch Choice Vision, our shared vision for the future. Creating great centers of communities is a core strategy of the vision. Having a center in your city near transit, trails, or major roadways gives residents more choices about what to visit, how to get around, and what to live in. And since these residents tend to drive less, use less water, and require fewer miles of new infrastructure, it saves money for the entire state, benefiting those people who work and live outside of the centers as well. Let's take a tour of a few current and planned centers around the region. We'll start by flying up to Weber County and visiting downtown Ogden, which is an anchor to the economy and the commercial, academic, dining, and entertainment hub for northern Utah. Ogden continues to invest in its downtown as a special, unique place, and it bustles with activity year-round. Ogden reworked their downtown zoning ordinances to produce the right development for the community. The economic health of the region is dependent upon the success of this center. Next, we travel south into Davis County to spotlight the work planned around Clearfield's Frontrunner Station. This is a community center taking shape with transportation choices in mind. By developing new homes and jobs within an easy walk of the Frontrunner Station, the residents will be able to access opportunities around the region without driving. Workers will be able to get to Clearfield without getting on I-15. This is good for traffic and for air quality. And Clearfield is planning for great community spaces in the heart of this new development. Now let's travel south into Salt Lake County to Mill Creek, an established city that through infill and redevelopment is bringing a unique mixed-use center to life in the heart of the community. Right in the center of this development is the Mill Creek Commons, which is the first element the city created to give its residents a gathering place, and it's already thriving with activity. Finally, we travel into Utah County to downtown Vineyard. Vineyard is another planned city center with visionary design, taking shape next to the Frontrunner Station. Right now, most of the homes in Vineyard are single-family detached with a yard. But this center will accommodate a mix of housing choices for people at different stages of life, like an older couple who don't want the hassle of having to mow their lawn and shovel snow, but still want to be near their grandkids. A younger adult or couple who are just getting started and don't need much space, but want access to good restaurants, entertainment, and transportation. As one of the fastest growing communities in the state, Vineyard is looking ahead at the varying needs of their residents. This is an exciting time with so many examples of communities doing great things in planning centers across our region and state. Working together, we can implement the Wasatch Choice vision and welcome centers into our communities to enhance our collective quality of life. Learn more at wasatchchoice.com.
Thanks, Mike. So in order to continue this great work of implementing the Wasatch Choice vision, we have to plan for a mix of uses and connectivity to these transit stations, and that's what station area planning is all about. As you know, House Bill 462 from 2022 required cities to plan around their fixed rail and BRT stations. This past year, as mentioned by Senator Harper and others, Senate Bill 27 made a modest but really impactful change to a piece of that, and that is how prior planning done by the cities is considered toward those requirements. So I'm going to go through a really quick update on how station area planning is going in general, and then we'll jump into what that change is and what we need to do as an organization to be ready to certify those plans. So a couple of things to highlight here. This is this graphic that we'll keep showing you over and over because we want to see all of these numbers move to the end of that timeline, but you'll see that 88 used to be the number of station areas, and that now says 91. And that's because we've added the Taylorsville BRT stations. They're not built, but they're gonna be, and they need station area plans. And we've actually just made a technical assistance award to get those moving for the city of Taylorsville. So we're really excited about that. We also just made an award to West Jordan for a track station. West Jordan is moving several station areas ahead. A lot of cities working hard on this, and we're here to help with that. We've now funded 40 out of 91 stations in some way. That could have been transportation and land use connection program, and it can be this new station area planning funding that's partnered with UTA, the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, which we're told we're allowed to say GOEO now, which is nice, and as well as the Mountain Land Association of Governments. And you'll see that we've certified 2 of those station areas and more to come. Okay, so the change made by Senate Bill 27 is on prior actions. In 2022, when we were working with legislators to develop this legislation, we knew that cities have done a lot of great planning, and we didn't want to toss that out the window, right? We want to recognize cities for the great planning that they've done while still upholding the reason behind this legislation, these objectives that are up here on the screen, increasing the availability and affordability of housing, promoting sustainable environmental conditions, enhancing access to opportunities, and increasing transportation choices and connections. A lot of you have been doing that for a long time, working toward those things. So you could take prior actions under House Bill 462 and count them toward the core elements, right? The vision, the map, the statement of how the objectives have been met. But though you may have some of those things in some forms, they might not be exactly by that letter of what's required now going forward. So this change pivots that prior action opportunity so that it focuses on the objectives. Prior actions need to substantially promote the station area plan goals, and they need to be found that the cities need to demonstrate that those prior actions, previous plans, land use applications, approved agreements with developers, investments, et cetera, you need to be able to demonstrate that those prior actions are still relevant to continuing to promote those objectives. So not just that great things have happened, but whatever ordinances you have in place, and those things are going to continue to propel great things forward substantially. And so the change we need to look at today is to our station area plan certification policy. And it is just to reflect that piece of state code. We will still be bringing any of those prior actions to this body, to the Regional Growth Committee and to this body to certify. That's still a decision that's made by the peers here, but it's just a tweak in how they'll be looked at. So I guess I can open it up for questions. The change is to be in that station area plan certification policy that's in your packet.
Okay, is there any questions, comments?
I just want to say, I think this is a really great fix. And I think it was an unanticipated roadblock and source of frustration at times that I think this just is going to make the process smoother and help cities be compliant so much faster, knowing that the work that's been done that is still relevant and absolutely meets the objective. I just think this is a great fix and I appreciate the lift on this. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Megan, thank you. Then, Madam Chair, I move that we approve the amendment to the Wasatch Front Regional Council Stationary Plan Certification Policy.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve
I'll
the
second-
amendment
I'll
and
second
a
that motion.
second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That amendment is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Merdando. I appreciate that. All right, our Transportation Coordinating Committee, which we affectionately refer to as TransCom. And did anybody else notice now we have another new acronym? Like you're going to have to update that 6-page document. The RTIP, is that new? The rural.
RTIF.
I thought so. I'm like, wait a minute. That's not on the 6-page document of acronyms. We're going to have to add it. Yeah, no, it's good. We love TransCom, and we have Commissioner Jim Harvey here to give us an update on that. Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great being with you today. Appreciate being with you. Now, look, we don't have we have 3 items today, and we don't have a fancy video necessarily in our presentation like Mayor Dandoy had and like Miranda Jones-Cox. However, we've got something I think just as good, if not better. We've got Ben Wolfrich today that's going to take care of that. But folks, items 1 through and including C are all in your packet. But item B is a action item, and that we'll take some discussion on that. But Ben, we'll turn that time over to you to have this presentation, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we'll pull that presentation up. And I think Megan could have done a pretty good job, but. So the Transportation Improvement Program, or just as a reminder, we refer to this document as the TIP, is an exciting document. It's a document that identifies those projects that have funds on them that are moving forward. The TIP is a 6-year program of the highway transit and active transportation projects. It implements our long-range plans. It also meets the short-range needs along the Wasatch Front. And as many of you are familiar, because of the dynamics of this document, it's modified about every time we meet. Right now, we are currently functioning under the 2023-2028 Transportation Improvement Program. And as the Commissioner referred to, we do have 3 items in the agenda that reference the TIP. The first one was a board modification that was presented to TransCom back in their February 16th meeting. And because of the delegation from the regional council, when the regional council doesn't meet, Transcom takes actions on those. We bring that information to this body for information. Then we have a new board mod, as the commissioner referred to, and then we will report on obligated funds. So the very first item, as we've referred to, this information is actually in your meeting materials. There are copies of tables that identify the board modifications that were taken to Transcom. Transcom reviewed those projects individually and then approved, and that signed resolution is included in the meeting materials. So today, the part that's important for this body is a board modification. It's actually board modification number 6, since this document was approved by this body back in August. Again, in your meeting materials are 2 tables, and those tables identify the new projects that we will, or those projects included in the board mod, not necessarily new, that we would ask for your approval at the conclusion of this. So the very first project that we will look at is a project in Davis County. This is a pedestrian overpass bridge. It's sponsored by Layton City. This particular project will construct a pedestrian facility over the Union Pacific and the Front Runner Railway corridor. It's within UTA's first and last mile project. It'll bring the pedestrians or bicycle users over the facilities and bring them right into the stations, enabling them access to the Front Runner. This project is not only part of or would enhance the ability to access the commuter rail, but it's part of a larger trail facility through Davis County. Now, the reason we're bringing this project before you at this time is this body's already taken action. Last year, we approved congestion mitigation air quality funds on this project. But at that same time, Davis County took action and approved Davis County funds on this project because we partially funded. And our funds were able to enhance or enable Davis County to put money towards it. And both the funds that were recommended by WFRC and the funds from Davis County were able to seed the pot or enable active transportation funds from UDOT to be applied to this project. So the reason for bringing this project before you is that we're combining all of these funds now into a single project identification number. The total funding for this project is about $8.2+ million. And the contributing, well, that's the reason we have it before you today. The next project that we have is also a project in Davis County, and this is a UDOT project. This is on West Davis Highway. As many of you are familiar with this facility, it's amazing. It's going to be new capacity, new construction. This actually runs from the legacy SR 67. I keep hitting the wrong, sorry if I'm blinding anyone with the red line, but the West Davis Highway here is a 16-mile facility. Now, when this project was originally programmed, the funds, and then the project was advertised, it actually came in under the amount of funds that were programmed or set aside for this project. And with the abilities to use the funds as quickly as possible so that we get the best use out of the money, there were funds that were de-obligated off this project. Well, now because of the market, the increase on the materials, shortages, right away, those costs have increased beyond the contingency level right now. So the request is that we increase the amount of funds back into this project by $50 million. Now, this project is still under construction, but this is using right now the best estimates for this project so that the work can continue forward on the West Davis Highway. The next project that we have is a project that's in Salt Lake City. This is on I-15. This is right around the 9th South project. Now, this project is pretty interesting because back when the I-15 was first constructed, there was a piece of right-of-way that was missed. And things went on well with no problem until I believe 2021, there was a landowner that purchased land from the railroad, Union Pacific there, and then he put up a fence. And that prohibited UDOT from the ability to get in and do any maintenance on this bridge structure. And so the request here is for additional funds. UDOT Region 2, I might add, used some contingency money to do all the studies and the work that was necessary to identify where the right-of-way needed to happen, but the requested funds for this project are so negotiations can take place and that right-of-way can be purchased by the Department of Transportation. So there's a request for an additional 700,000 to add to the 75,000 from the region to enable this to take place. And so all of the I-15 corridor can be under the direction of UDOT. The next project is an interesting project. These projects are TAP projects from the region. So every year, each of the region identifies projects. They're smaller in scale transportation type projects. And these projects would be bike, recreational, safe routes to school type projects. And so each region takes an opportunity and sends out a request for applications for projects. Region 1 has identified 3 projects in that process. You may recall that back in January, we approved 4 projects that Region 1 had identified through the same process. These projects are identified and we'll review them quickly. The first one being in Layton. This particular project will construct a bike ped facility, 10-foot path along Gentile and Bluff. The estimated project cost on this project is $300,000. The TAP funds are bringing $150,000 to the table, and the local funds are bringing $150,000 to the table. And this will construct that 10-foot shared use path where sidewalk and existing facilities are non-existent. The next project is a project in Farmington. This is a safe routes to school project on 5th South. This particular project will construct missing sidewalks in this particular area. The estimated project cost on this project is $70,000. The TAP funds providing about, what was it? $5,200 or $52,500. And the locals bringing $17,500 to the program. The last project as part of this board modification is a project in Fruit Heights. This is also to construct missing sidewalk. This project will construct along Country Lane. Their estimated project cost is $200,000. The TAP funds bringing $150,000 to the program, and the locals bringing $50,000 to match that $150,000. That is all the projects that are before you right now as part of this board modification.
So that represents those 6 projects that in item B of our agenda, with those projects so capably presented. Ben, thank you. Madam Chair, I move that we approve those modifications to the 2023 through 2028 TIP program.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And Ben, thank you for that great presentation. We have a motion on the table to approve the modifications to the 23 through 28 TIP. Is there a second? We have a second from Mr. Braceras. Any discussion?
Can I make a
Please,
just a comment,
absolutely.
please? So on behalf of Layton, I do want to say thank you very much for the funding. And obviously, both of these projects, although they're located in our city, you can see that they will benefit our surrounding area as well, especially as we look at the connectivity of the active trails and getting to the UTA station. So, I mean, I'm excited about this, and I want to just say thank you because I know it benefits more than just my community.
Awesome. Thank you. That comment is an example of my favorite mantra, which is to think regionally and act locally. Well done. That's good. Thank you. Any other comments? No one online? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving the modifications to the TIP, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. That motion is passed.
Ben, unless there's something else, Madam Chair, that concludes our report.
There's just, Commissioner, there's the item on 5C. If you would like
5C.
that review
was in
that,
their
or
packet, but go ahead if you'll just kind of touch on that then, Ben.
will do. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Commissioner. So like its predecessor, our current transportation bill requires that WFRC, UDOT, and our transit agencies coordinate our efforts to report on obligations in the prior year. And just to show a real quick statewide here, as far as the obligations, we've siloed it down to just these few 8 categories here, but there was over 500 million of federal funds spent in the state of Utah, or obligated, spent is the wrong word, but obligated or de-obligated. The problem is that 500 and plus million doesn't reflect all the work. It just shows the obligations of those federal funds. This actually equates to about 20% of the total funds that are spent on transportation, including the state and local funds. In the Wasatch Front area, there was over 300 million in obligations. That's about 330 plus projects that were done just along the Wasatch Front that had funds obligated or de-obligated, and that's about 56% of the total funds obligated in the state were obligated along the Wasatch Front. Just want to share that with you, recognize the efforts of each one of your cities, and in particular UDOT and UTA, for all the work that is done in our behalf. But that would conclude the report on the obligation.
Thank you, Ben. Perfect. Madam Chair, with that, that concludes our section of this, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody have any questions? No? Okay, Commissioner, appreciate it. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. All right, moving on. We're going to turn to Mayor Mike Caldwell from our Budget Committee to give his report. And we appreciate him joining us too. We appreciate all of you. Some of you are sacrificing slightly more to be here with us today than others. Mayor Caldwell.
Not being there in person, but we've done a lot of work in the last little bit, and we met earlier this month, and I'm bringing 2 action items to the. We have action to release the draft fiscal year 24 WFRC goals, budget, and unified planning work, and the program for public comment. Andrew, do you need me to hand that over to you, or where do you want me to go with this?
Sure, Mr. Chair, if that works for you, I'm happy to, Marion and I are happy to describe this item. Would you like us to do that?
Yep, please do.
Okay, thanks, Mayor Caldwell. Okay, everybody, so the item that the mayor was just describing, this is the beginning of our annual budget process. So looking ahead to next year, fiscal year 24, each year in March, we adopt, in collaboration with our budget committee and under the guidance of our budget committee, the goals for our agency for next year, the budget for the agency for the next year, and then also what we call the Unified Planning Work Program, which is a comprehensive statement of all of the work that we will do. We prepared these materials. They were included in your packet. The process that we go through is, again, we work with the budget committee. So the budget committee today is recommending to you that we release these materials for public comment. And then we would receive comments from the public, from any of the members around the region, from the councils of governments around the region. And then we would come back at our May meeting to make any modifications needed and then adopt the goals, budget, and unified planning work program. So that's the way that the flow of this. Now, in the interest of time, we're going to be brief here. I'm going to describe briefly the goals. Marion is going to describe briefly the proposed budget. I'm saying briefly, but I want to be clear that transparency and accountability in our budgeting process is critical to us. So we are more than happy to answer any questions you may have now and also offline. If at any point anybody has any questions, any of us, Mary and myself and any of us on our team are very happy to answer and address questions, okay? Having said that, I'm going to share on the screen the high level look at the goals, the draft goals for our agency for fiscal year 24. Now, I will note to you, those of you that are paying attention to this, will see that there is a lot of consistency from our goals for FY23 to FY24. I'll run through these quickly, and then I'll highlight just a few notable modifications. So goal number 1, you can see it in front of you, collaboratively advance the Wasatch Choice vision as the framework for integrating transportation, land use, and economic development to best address growth-related opportunities and challenges. The second goal is to effectively administer our ongoing plans and programs, all of the work that you were hearing about that Ben was just describing, our regional transportation plan, to move those responsibilities that we have efficiently and effectively. The third is to provide subject matter expertise to federal, state, and local officials and policymakers. This is the space where we're doing this legislative work, where we're working with our federal delegation and our partners in Washington, D.C. to advance good policy and good investment. And then finally, striving for organizational excellence, and you'll see there ensuring accountability and transparency to WFRC members in policymaking and prudent, efficient use of resources and budget stability. Now, to facilitate your review of this, we also put in your packets a red line version that shows the changes from the proposed changes from 23 to 24. I will highlight just a few things here. Under the first goal about the Wasatch Choice vision, you'll see this emphasis on helping you, local communities, to implement your envisioned Wasatch Choice Vision Centers. That's the HTRZ work, the station area plan work, the technical assistance that WFRC provides with the collaboration support of Salt Lake County and UDOT and UTA to your communities. In the second goal, effectively administering our ongoing plans and programs, I will highlight for you this change here on regional trail network planning. This fits in with what we talked about before on Senate Bill 185 and the active transportation investment to work with you and with UDOT and all of the partners to make sure that we're identifying what the best uses are of the new resources available for these regionally significant trails. In the third goal, I will highlight to you working for the effective implementation of the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Miranda talked about grants we've received, grants we've applied for. I'll note Laura Hansen from GOP, Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, is here, who's coordinating a lot of this work for the state of Utah, ably, I'll add. So thank you, Laura. And then also working on the development of this comprehensive safety action plan. Again, mentioned by Miranda earlier, the grant that we received from the federal government to develop a safety action plan for our region's transportation system. And then finally, under Strive for Organizational Excellence, I think we're all still trying to do this, but maintain an appropriate balance between telecommuting and on-site office work. And hopefully the fact that we provide to our members and to the public the ability to participate in our meetings in person and online is something that's beneficial. Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, I'm going to pause there on the goals before we turn to the budget to see, if I may, if anybody has any comments or questions about the draft goals. The last thing I'll say, again, there's a lot of continuity from last year to this year. That's because the nature of our work is there is continuity year to year. So we are modifying rather than starting over, typically in our goals. Anybody? Comments or questions? Looking online? No? Okay. With your permission, we'll then turn to the budget. I'll introduce Marion. You want to go ahead and come on up? I'm going to drop the screen here. We, again, provided to you a lot of information in our materials about the draft budget, lots of details, because again, we want to make sure that we are communicating to you what's happening with our expenditures and our revenues and making sure that you understand it all. The one introductory comment I'll make and then turn to Marion, our Chief Financial Officer, is that the budget is a relatively, it's not a very exciting budget. What I mean is there's not a lot of change happening proposed from FY23 to FY24. A lot of stability with one exception, and that is in our consulting line item, our contractual line item, where we are sort of continually changing that line item as new projects come online and then we complete them. So if you see number changes, it's mainly because of those consulting projects, but overall, we have a lot of stability in our budget. With that, Marion.
Thank you. Yes, I would absolutely agree with that, especially following Ben's presentation, which involves a lot of money moving around to a lot of different places. I'm delighted to be presenting to you our WFRC budget, which is entirely contained here. And as Andrew mentioned, it is relatively flat and all of the details are in your budget packets. We provide not only the draft budget, but also a set of footnotes and a memo that really describes generally what is happening in the budget for this year. But I'll go over just a few highlights. The change that we see is a result of our process where we budget for new and ongoing programs in our initial budget, which is the one that we're looking at today, and then amend our budget in October after closing the prior fiscal year. So our budget grows in October to reflect any projects that are ongoing that are closing with still funds to be spent. The two major changes that you'll see today in the initial budget are in the consulting and in the staffing lines, which is absolutely, normal for this organization. This is what we do pretty much every year. The consulting line shows a drop of $2.5 million, which is the result of changes in 3 major programs. So if you look at those 3 programs, you will see that $2.5 million change because we are finishing out the household travel survey, which was a $2 million project. We will have awarded a major portion of our station area planning funds, which you just reviewed, I think. And we were awarded the Safe Streets for All grant, which you also just heard about. So those changes in aggregate meant a drop for this initial budget of $2.5 million in our consulting line. Again, that will grow in October as we incorporate our TLC and some other programs that are ongoing. The other line is staffing. And we have proposed an overall 9% increase to that line. And that 9% includes increases for health insurance, for COLA, for merit, for our ongoing market analysis and adjustments, as well as 2 additional staff people that are in the budget. One is a community and economic development staff person. We had proposed 2 in our previous budget and we're able to hire 1. So we're looking to fill that second position. And also a new position funded by the state, a local government administrator whose work would support small communities in our area which do not currently have any city manager. And I think that's a program that's being spearheaded by the ULCT and that we're pleased to be a part of. And so that will kick off next year. Those are the 2 major changes. I'm happy to answer any questions anytime. Lots of detail in your packet again. So delighted if there's any questions, but also happy to hand it back to you.
Mr. Chair, Mayor Caldwell, again, we would be more than happy to answer any questions now or later, but again, in the interest of time, we'll turn it back to you and see if you or if anybody else has any questions or comments.
Happy to open up for questions or comments.
Carlton Christensen, go ahead.
I've seen palm trees in St. George, but I've never seen them in Ogden.
Right? Why don't we have budget committee there?
I can't tell you. Ogden's an amazing place. We can grow anything here. We got very very enterprising people.
If there's a grant available to learn how to do that here along the Wasatch Front, I want in.
I wish I could tell you. Wish I could tell you.
Mayor Caldwell, I should note, I said this already, but just to be clear that the motion before the body today, presuming Mayor Caldwell makes that motion momentarily, will be to release the draft budget goals and the Unified Planning Work Program for public comment, as I described earlier. And Andrea.
And there's a summary of the Unified Planning Work Program in your packet as well for your review.
Okay. And then there, Mayor Dolly asked a question that I'll address. He asked, what will the actual market and COLA percentages be? And Mayor Dolly, the answer is, we don't know yet. We don't know the answer to that yet. What as Marion described, there's a 9% cap on the entirety of that line item, which would cover any COLA or merit increases and health insurance, and fully budgeting for the full complement of our staff people. And then what we do every year, what Marion has started doing and will continue to do, is sort of survey what the state is doing, what the counties are doing, what the city is doing, and to the market, so that we make sure that any adjustments that we do to salary or benefits are consistent with essentially what all of you are doing. But that hasn't been determined yet. Thanks for the good question.
And to Carlton's point, I'll apologize for being in a place where it's palm trees, but I appreciate being able to zoom in and ask questions and be able to be informed and listen. Any other questions or comments?
I appreciate the fact that you're foregoing the dinner hour for us on the Eastern Time Zone.
Well, I appreciate that as well. If there are no more questions, I move that we release the draft fiscal year 24 WFRC goals budget unified planning work program for public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a motion and a second by Mayor Petro. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of releasing this, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We've got another action item, right?
You have one more action item, which is an amendment to the current UPWP.
Mayor, do you want to cover that or do you want us to cover that?
You can cover that.
Okay. So Marion, I'll take this one. Okay, this is brief. So we already described the Unified Planning Work Program proposed for FY24. We have a current program for FY23 and a modest proposed amendment to the current Unified Planning Work Program. Your packets provided information regarding a proposed amendment that was actually requested by UTA. They received a federal discretionary grant under the Areas of Persistent Poverty Program to evaluate potential improvements to their paratransit service. This is service basically to people with disabilities who can't use the regular fixed route service, bus and train. That project, that effort is going to begin in the spring of this year. So they requested, therefore, that it be added to our current Unified Planning Work Program for this year so that it can move forward. And again, the Budget Committee reviewed and talked about this. So Mayor Caldwell, we'd be happy to answer any questions about this one if anybody has any, if anyone has any.
Any questions on that presentation?
I'm not seeing any.
If not, we would, the Budget Committee reviewed and recommends approval of this amendment. So I would make a motion that we approve this. Second. Okay, we have a first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Good, yes.
Yes.
not
good,
hearing
okay.
any opposition, that passes.
Thanks,
All
Mayor
right.
Caldwell.
Thank you,
Yep.
Mayor and Marion. Thank you.
So go scare those tarpon.
I'm trying, it's too early in the season, but it's not bad.
Be safe. Have a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, I think we're going to turn to Mayor Nguyen.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to report for the Wasatch Front Economic Development District. And we have been focused on the 5-year Regional Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or our SEDS update. And the timeline for the completion of this project is September of 2024. And thus far, we have completed the focus groups, the individual interviews, and all of the analytics. So right now we're working on a survey to address the strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. And then along with the regional SEDS, the state's been working to complete their statewide unified economic plan with the 7 associations of governments. So we'll be excited to hear all of that when they're completed. The WFEDD has also been discussing all of the legislative issues, as all of us have, the economic data and business expansion opportunities. So from time to time, the U.S. Economic Development Administration sends out notices about funding opportunities. And the EDA has just opened up their Public Works and their Economic Adjustment Assistance Notice of Funding. And both of these programs provide communities with funding so that they can become economically competitive. These are important things that really we need to look into. So if anybody has any questions, if you'll contact Marcia White at the WFRC, she can provide you with any more information on this funding opportunity. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. All right, next we're going to go to Mayor Walker, Active Transportation Committee.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good, good. My background's not as good as Caldwell's, but again, I'm not Caldwell, so there you go. Anyway, a little bit to report on the active transportation committees, our work and what's going on. Just to update you, WFRC and MAG have both received a Safe Streets and Roads a grant to develop a comprehensive safety and action plan specifically to improve safety and for people that are using active transportation, cyclists, walking. They're also, UDOT's getting ready to undertake a vulnerable road user assessment across the state. So to identify which roads are, I guess, the most dangerous or ones that need the most help to make them safe for active transportation users. Again, the funding for the Active Transportation Investment Fund, I mean, it's unbelievable, really, when you think about it. It's tremendous. I mean, you got to give the governor some really good kudos for having the vision right now to step into this space. So, I mean, it's amazing. We look forward as a committee to working with UDOT to, the goal of this is to provide a really good place for Carlos to ride up Parley's Canyon, but also a bunch of other safe trails for people to, to use to commute to work and to other places they want to go. And I'm certainly we can commute up Parley's Canyon as well. No, it's truly remarkable to see this level of funding go into active transportation. It shows a commitment from our leaders legislatively statewide to do active transportation, because it's certainly a big part of our future. UDOT, UTA, MAG, and WFRC and 10 local communities have submitted an application for a federal RAISE grant that would improve the first and last mile access to transit, traditionally in underserved areas. So we're waiting for the awards on that. Bike Utah and WFRC, this is kind of cool, have organized an out-of-state mobile active transportation tour in Davis, California, which is one of the premier bicycle cities in the United States. I'm going to that conference. I know some of you are as well. We'll report back from that. I'm sure we'll get some good, video of opportunity to show you what they're doing in Davis, a bicycle friendly community. And we hope to be planning and moving forward with Bike Month, even though it's March and it's snowing outside, Mike. The Golden Spike bike ride, celebrating the trail network. We did that last year. It was really fun. It goes from Ogden to Provo. So if you think about a trail network, there's probably very few like it in the United States, where you can go from, like, say, Ogden to Provo and never really deal with a motor vehicle as a cyclist. So phenomenal opportunity to recognize that Golden Spoke. If you haven't done Golden Spoke, you ought to come out. You don't have to do the whole distance. You could pick a segment and come out and ride with us on it and just see what an amazing piece of infrastructure it is to have for us to use. But we're looking forward to that. So Bike to Work Day is May 19th. And so we hope you'll have an opportunity to get involved in that. And our next active transportation meeting is in April, on April the 12th. So that's really my report. We've got a lot of exciting stuff, and I look forward to reporting on what Davis, California is doing. So thank you.
Troy, just for the record, I'm going to that trip as well, but you want to ride from Ogden to Salt Lake with me?
I'll do it. Absolutely.
All right.
I'm in.
We'll bring you up.
That's on the record.
Yeah, and Jim Harvey will be there as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's going to be a party.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bob Stevenson, are you in?
Sorry to wake you, Bob. Sorry to wake you.
I'll work on Bob. You
can ride a Harley, Bob.
No, not on our trail.
Is it downhill? That's what I want to know. Is it downhill?
Yeah, of course
Hey,
it is.
I still have the 3-wheel with a flat tire.
No, that was once in a lifetime, and that isn't going to happen again.
Awesome. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Mayor Walker, thank you. All right, we're going to turn to Christy Dahlberg here with WFRC for our CDBG awards announcement.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me just the briefest of moments to announce our awards for the 2023 CDBG cycle. I believe it's in your packet, and there's a brief little handout. I could try and do them off the top of my head, but the award amounts are a little crazy. Anyway, I will say Tooele City was awarded a grant amount for $400,000 to do sewer improvements. Thank you, Rosie. Washington Terrace was awarded two projects for advanced metering infrastructure as well as fire equipment totaling $250,000. And Tooele County Boys and Girls Club will receive $150,000 for building modifications to their clubhouse. And if you have any questions about CDBG, I'm happy to chat after this or anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, our executive director's report. Andrew, part of the support team here that made my chair's report so great has left. We got a lot of strong people here. So if you need them, like they're here, but knock yourself out.
That's good. Thank you, Mayor. Speaking of relying on terrific people, all I have for you today in a brief executive director's report is I get to do one of my favorite things, which is recognize two of WFRC's terrific staff. That's Bert Granberg. First, where's Bert? Bert, you stand up, Bert. Please stand up, Bert. Bert Granberg is the director of our analytics team here at WFRC, and he has been with WFRC for 5 years now. Now, the analytics group sometimes works behind the scenes, but what they do is they develop and use custom tools to help our region forecast where growth is anticipated and how people might travel based on potential transportation investments and land use changes. And really, the work that this team leads informs all of the major transportation decisions in the Wasatch Front. Bert personally is constantly thinking about how we can better understand the overall landscape of our region through analytics, and then how to share that information with more people. He's a tremendous collaborator and an innovator. He loves working with others and finding the right solutions to a problem, even if new ground needs to be plowed. Really, though, Bert is energized by being in the outdoors, whether it's mountain biking and skiing with his wife and daughter, or bike commuting to and from WFRC's office. I think he's the leader in that pack. And so will you all please join me in congratulating and thanking Bert for his 5 years of service. And then standing right next to Bert in the doorway here is our newest employee, Sarah Lawless. WFRC is very excited to welcome Sarah as she's joining our analytics team as a data scientist, which is a really cool, apparently this is what they call it now. I sound old saying that, right? But it's really cool. But in Sarah's case, it's true. She's a data scientist. She has a really impressive GIS, or geographic information systems and mapping, technical and coordination skills that have positioned her right away to be contributing insight and information to all of WFRC's work and to all of you, to our communities across the region and our partners. Prior to joining WFRC, she worked as a GIS analyst in both the public and private sector. So she's bringing that expertise from both of those arenas to us. Sarah lives 5 front runner stops to the south in Lehigh. Yes, we let people come up here from Utah County to work here. She's not the only one, with her husband. And like most of us, she's a Red Rock enthusiast. She said she wants to move to St. George, but we hope she doesn't do it too soon. So please join me in welcoming Sarah to the WFRC team. And Madam Chair, that concludes my executive director's report.
Well done. Impressive. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Any other business we need to go over today? Seeing none, we have a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second? We have a second. All in favor? All in favor? I need to hear you say we're adjourned. That's good. Just a reminder, our next meeting is May 25th, 2023. We'll look forward to seeing all of you there. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate all your service. Thanks.
And at the UAC Building Utah Conference.